Welcome to Business Mastery with Dawn Kennedy, your quick under 45-minute dose of expert insights and strategies to make a positive impact on your business and life. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Business Mastery Podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about operations streamlining, which is a topic that we should revisit once in a while, I think, as business owners. But I don't know that while we're in it and in the thick of it, we're really thinking much about the streamlining process until we run into a problem. And so some of this probably needs to be a little preventative. So I have Damon here who's going to talk to us all about how to think through operations streamlining. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, Don, great to be on your show for sure.
Thank you so much. Can you tell everyone who you are and who you serve?
Yeah, so Damon Flowers, I serve small to medium-sized business owners that are kind of in that $1 to $30 to $50 million space.
All right, great. So operations streamlining, before we started recording, you said that there's been a newer topic that you have been addressing. But before we get there, can you explain for the audience what you mean by operations streamlining?
Yeah. So I'll throw out a bold statement, and that is that modern operations is the new engine. It is the new engine for business, just flat out. And the reason for that is that we are in a time when businesses are being asked to move a lot faster. Owners are being asked to make decisions quicker. And we're simply not set up for this. And we can unpack this in just a moment, but the system of business, how most people run their business, is not set up to take advantage of the innovation that's happening and be able to be in flow with how fast the world is moving today. And so the way to fix that is not by a newer form of marketing or sales or anything else. It's really about transitioning to a new business model. This isn't a model just for e-commerce or SaaS or brick and mortar or whatever. This is really a new model for business. And that new model is one that is more of a hub and spoke model, where operations lives at the core, at the hub, and then it serves the various teams, staff, departments, if you will, on the spoke, if you will. So serving marketing and sales and fulfillment or product and service, that kind of thing. And done well, then operations is the engine that enables business to move faster and be in line with how fast and how quick our world is moving today.
And that's sort of backwards. Typically, we think that all of those outlying areas, finance, marketing, sales, serves operations. But to your point, operations is the engine that should be serving those other, factions of the business, or the spokes themselves, right? Because we could probably point to 7 or 8 different areas that operations would need to serve for them to be able to do their jobs. So it's a little bit of an inverted way of looking at your business, because most of the time we'll start with the external going in, right? So we'll start with sales and marketing, and then we'll tell operations sort of what's happening next. So let's talk a little bit about how you see this being inverted and how it's been working with companies.
Yeah, so to do that, let's go back on a journey over the last 30 years. So we'll kind of go back and look at this from a historical perspective.
Great.
So for the last 30 years or so, businesses have outsourced portions of themselves to other systems. We have outsourced sales, as an example, to Salesforce. We have outsourced marketing to tools maybe like HubSpot. We've outsourced customer fulfillment to tools like Zendesk or Freshdesk or Intercom. We've outsourced merchant processing to Stripe, and contract signing to DocuSign, and project and task management to Asana, all of which live at the edge, right? So the problem with that is then there is nothing at the center. And when there's nothing at the center, then the founder, the business owner, and staff members, key staff members, start to become the human integration layer holding everything together. So many of your audience will kind of recognize maybe the founder or the business owner getting asked, hey, what do we do about this particular customer or this prospect? Or, hey, I've got a question about such and such. Or, can you take a look at this contract and make sure this is good before it goes out? What do we do in this particular case? How do we handle this support ticket? So What's happening right now is that we're seeing this older model being exposed for what it is. If we were not in rapid innovation right now, the old model would just continue working, but it's no longer working because we're in a rapid pace of innovation. So business owners and staff are being asked to do far more than they were before. Owners are being asked to, make decisions much faster, to be much more adaptable. Oftentimes we hear about news coming in, be it geopolitics or, monetary policy changes, tariffs, changes to the workforce, et cetera. And all of that is causing businesses to have to react, and they are not able to react as quick as they would like to. So all of that is thrusting businesses to have to change to a different model, and that new model is this hub and spoke. So done correctly, this will allow businesses to get more into the stream of the flow of how fast the world is moving. Again, to be able to make faster decisions, pivot quicker, et cetera.
Yeah. So if operations is the hub, what happens inside operations then that would serve those outlying areas that generally people in business can go, oh, okay. So finance is a hub or a spoke, or is it both? Let's talk about what does operations actually cover?
Yeah, great question. So, back in the quote old days, right? Operations was really an afterthought. It was make sure that you have paper clips, and office supplies in the office or something, right? Um, but we really looked at marketing was sort of the leader, and then we looked at sales as sort of the leader, right? But the truth is that modern operations is really holds a lot more responsibilities today than it did in the past. So let's unpack that for a moment. The operational core of your business should hold all of the context of your business. And what I mean by context is a definition of where are we going? Where do we want to be in 3 or 4 or 5 years? Who are we, for instance? What do we value? What do we want to be known for? What's our brand, right? Et cetera. The question of who do we serve, right? Who's our customer, and what are they challenged with? What problems are they having? How do we benefit them? And then also the question of what's the market telling us? And then therefore, what decisions are we going to be making to respond to that? So all that context, when it lives in the center in that operational hub, it now serves all those various groups. So it serves marketing and being able to make decisions about how we're promoting our brand and how we're getting prospect eyes, for instance, to take a look at our products and services. It helps to set the tone then for the types of products and the types of services that we launch. It supports sales in their effort to talk with prospects. And the operational core then also becomes almost like the traffic cop to enable, for instance, information that's coming from product or service to be able to make its way over to marketing, or information that's coming from support to be able to make its way to sales. So that everybody is on the same page. We start to see alignment. We start to see alignment from leadership down through staff, because everybody has a transparent view of what's happening and again, where we're going. What that also does is it starts to offload decision responsibility from the founder or the business owner. It starts to offload decision responsibility from key staff members as well, because now we're in more of a shared system. So now marketing is enabled to make decisions that are good for marketing, but they're also good for the business. Sales as well, product, service, fulfillment too. And what we start to see then is that the whole business works as a cohesive unit. So no longer are we, for instance, pouring a bunch of time or money or expertise into marketing, and maybe we're really blowing out marketing, but then we're now seeing fulfillment can't handle the number of, for instance, customers that are coming in. So we're sort of trading one problem for another. And so operations is also, I want your listeners to think about modern operations is the connective tissue that brings the organization together. It's, like your body, for instance, right? We kind of think about, oh, well, it's all about marketing, it's all about sales. That would sort of be like, oh, well, it's all about, the brain being disconnected from the rest of the body, or, I've got muscles, but, no activity to kind of help direct them, for instance. We need to think about it cohesively, where all systems work together for the greater good.
What I heard when you said this, believe it or not, and you were talking about in the old days, I read something not that long ago about NASA in like the 60s trying to get someone on the moon, that if you asked anybody on the team, what their role was, they said, well, we're getting someone to the moon, whether it was the person mopping the floors or the head engineer or everybody, sort of knew that at the end of the day, whatever their contribution was, it was to this greater good of getting someone on the moon. So I'm curious if we evolved out of that, or is that similar? And then now we're kind of going back there because it's really how business at that speed needs to function. I mean, we put a guy on the moon in what, 6 years, 9 years, whatever it was, when you think about it. Are we just returning back to a well-oiled functioning machine where everybody knew what they were doing and what the goal was?
Yeah, I love that example, by the way, and I can think of others too. For instance, Southwest Airlines. So
Yeah.
for many years after Southwest Airlines came about or launched, really, there were many stories about maybe a plane getting delayed in terms of turning around. So the pilot would get out of the plane and come down and help the baggage crew, for instance, load bags on the plane because, as a company, they were very clear in their values, right? And very transparent. And that created a company that was able to move very well and very rapidly. And I agree that over the last several years, we've become very specialized, right? So all across the board, if you think about medicine, there are specialists. You go talk to one specialist and they don't really know anything about, another area. And business has really become the same way. We become very specialized. So we're very specialized in buying a tool for a very specific thing. And many times today, business owners are running, 20, 30, 50, 70 plus disconnected tools to sort of, act as specialists in all these areas. But those tools really don't connect together in a way. There's nothing really, again, riding at the core. And so because of that, we see a lot of fragmentation, and that fragmentation is not good in a world where we need to move cohesively, we need to move quickly, we need to be able to again make decisions fast. We need to be able to see, oh well, there's a change happening, in the marketplace, or there's a change happening economically, and we as a business need to be able to respond to that and move forward. Another example I like to use is
I love the
kind
Southwest
of
example. Just saying,
yeah.
I'm familiar with the case study. I love it.
Another example I like to use is kind of this one of imagine that, you and your company and all of your staff are like getting into a boat and you're traveling across the Atlantic. You're leaving New York Harbor and traveling over to England, for instance. And some people are working down in the engine room, and some people are working in hospitality, making sure we have clean food and water to drink. Some people are working in navigation, some people in communication. But the truth is, we're all reliant on one another, right? We all have individual responsibilities, but we're all reliant on one another to make it across. And I want you to think about your company in the same way, that the idea of setting a vision for where we're going to England. What do we value, for instance, what type of culture do we want to create, for instance, while we're on that journey? Making sure that we have ownership at various places within the business, and making sure that we're all working together, again, in this kind of transparent way, to be able to get there. And that way, as storms come up or we need to course correct or things of that nature, we can very quickly, right? We're not sort of isolated in a way where we get in a lot of trouble because one portion of the team is working on one area and another portion is working on something else.
Right. That's another great example, another great analogy. I was in the Navy. I don't know if I've ever,
Wow.
I don't know if I've ever said that on a podcast before. I'm not sure. But yeah, I was on a ship. So it's like when you brought that example, it's like, yes, everybody knows how to do general quarters, right? Everybody knows what to do if there's a problem. So what a great example. I don't know that that example is out there much in the world of business because we have become so, I use the word siloed, right? So marketing does marketing, and they're like, just give us the 90-day plan. We've got it from here. Or,
Yeah.
production might be the same way. Well, we know that this is, our par, and this is what we're going to do over that. Um, so what an interesting way to look at the hub and spoke, because the hub and spoke doesn't necessarily mean like the classic graphic where you have the big circle in the middle and the little circles on the outside. You're saying it's like you're all on a boat. You're all going in the same way, and each of you are all inside that circle at some level.
Yeah, yeah. And what we think about too is we think about what's most important that we all need access to, and then we put that in the center. So context is one thing we mentioned. We call it context engineering in the development world, but the idea of organizing that context so that it serves everybody in the company. Another thing that we want to think about is, for instance, with AI, we don't want to deploy AI as another tool, right, on the periphery or the edge, because now when we do, it may start to really help sales or it may really start to help your service side, but it's not helping anybody else, right? So AI as well works best when it's deployed in the core, the operational core, and AI then also has uh, it has the information that it needs in order to run. So it knows the context of your business. It knows, for instance, where we're going and what we're focused on this quarter and who we sell and what they have to say and what products, we have, et cetera. And that AI now continues to get advanced and improved at the core, and that enables and serves, again, all of your teams, all of your staff to do what they do better and better and better.
Right. So before we started this episode, we were talking a little bit about some of the AI stuff that you've been talking about and seeing. So beyond leaving it at the core, what else do you see AI doing as far as operations streamlining, and then supporting the hub and spoke model even more than we've been doing with the, as you said, human integrator?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
it's true. It's very true. We sometimes become tool managers, right?
Yeah, and to kind of pick on that a little bit more before we move into the AI portion completely, when you are operating sort of that old business model, uh, and humans are then required to be the human integration layer to kind of keep everything sort of moving, the problem with that is then that you're not free to spend one-on-one human time because we're caught in the weeds, we're firefighting, we're overwhelmed with so much stuff to do, whether in marketing or in, helping with service or, helping customers. And the second problem is that we're not able to think strategically because again, we're just down in the weeds. So some of the benefits that we'll start to see by moving to this new model is the ability to have your operations, your systems, automation, AI, et cetera, work very, very effectively. And that freeing you up to now have conversations, for instance, with prospects, with customers, with potential partners, with affiliates, right? And being able to spend more human time, and then second, to be able to free up to spend more time strategically. Not just the leader, but all throughout the business for us to have time and space to unpack. How could I do my role better? How could I reach and have better conversations? Um, where would I like to see my role advance, for instance, over the next 6 to 12 months? And those are really fun questions to ask. Now, I will say for me, I'm not one to say that we need to deploy AI and fire everybody and AI is going to take over. I'm a big believer that AI needs to be needs to be an enhancement to us as people to do our job better. We have a lot of job recs open and we'll be continuing to hire people, even though we're heavy, heavy, heavy users of AI. So I would encourage other folks to think the same. This is not about just deploying AI and firing people, for instance, to try to get your costs down. It's really about deploying AI so that your people can now be better at what they do and again, be more strategic.
Yeah, I think AI, it's maturing in a way. I've read some articles where it's an and, not an or, right? So we use AI and humans. And again, at the speed of business nowadays, it just makes a lot of sense. We've been reading the horror stories, if you will, about the sweeping layoffs, and now they're rehiring all the people. And it's nice to be on the outside watching someone else make those mistakes for sure, but it can't be very comfortable if those mistakes are now being corrected. But it is definitely information. I think that we can look at it, rely on as, okay, this is sort of how we're figuring it out, kind of like the internet originally. It's what is this for? And then, e-commerce. I'm not putting my credit card on there. Now you have a Google Wallet and you just tap your phone. So, the adoption and stuff over time. I do want you, though, to also speak about AI at the operational hub because I want to understand from your perspective where AI can also be an assistant beyond writing your copy or doing your marketing plans or helping. I mean, I use it for, inventory projection, right? Taking a look at things. What else should we or can we or what have we not thought of that should be in operations? Maybe needs a little AI helper. But if we're bringing all the things into that core values and things, what else should we be considering?
Yeah, good question. So for us, again, my company deploys and builds operating systems for businesses that uses this hub and spoke type of model. And within that, we also deploy an agentic AI system, again, thinking about that agentic AI being in the operational hub. And so for us, again, operations is really meant to be thinking, okay, what's the context of the business, building that in first, and then understanding the processes for the business. And once those processes are well understood and they're working, now we go to work systematizing those processes. So we want to think about AI, for instance, not just well, in some instance, experimenting with AI, using it, for instance, to maybe write emails, come up with marketing plans, do financial projections. There's, of course, a lot of that.
Right.
And then AI in terms of automation, deploying that once we have a process that's understood, for instance, and we want to continue to expand it. Another thing I would suggest is thinking about AI very much like you're training a staff member. So, if we hired somebody brand new into our company, right, and they've got a role, that role, for instance, is responsible for a particular chunk of the business, right? So responsible for a copy or responsible for financial projections, whatever it is. That role also has some functions. It needs that individual needs to be trained, for instance, on here's where you find certain things in the business. Here's where we operate projects, and here's where we interact with customers, and here's where our products live. I want you to think about training your AI in the same way. So first of all, let's flash forward, for instance, and define for ourselves what would our roadmap look like 6 months or 12 months from now, and build an org chart, for instance. So that org chart would have different roles, for instance, and some of those roles are going to be individuals you're going to hire, and some of those roles may be agents, if you will, that are running that particular area of the business. So we do that, and now we start to define roles, and then through those roles, we also then start to hand them skills or train them with skills. So imagine an agent now that is serving a purpose in the business, and they have a series of skills just like a human would, and they have resources that they have access to, and of course then the context of the business, which is what everything rides on. So think about this as, let's say, for instance, that you're a small business and you're at maybe $1 million, you're wanting to grow to $5 million. Well, typically most small businesses at that phase are not able to hire a CFO or a controller, right? As an example. So in that case, you're growing to a place where you may want to have a human that is doing that work, but in the beginning, creating a role that is maybe your CFO, and that role is trained then on the skills that a CFO has. And then that role and that agent now with the context of your business is able to do things that a normal CFO would do. So maybe running financial projections, for instance, or doing some financial modeling as an example. So let's kind of go back and summarize. So we talked about first looking ahead 6 to 12 months, what roles would I want to have in my company, right? So I'm defining from marketing and sales and product and fulfillment, all of that. Next, I'm looking at, okay, well, what's the roadmap that I want to hire to for staff? And then I'm going to fill in the gaps with agents. And then when I think about deploying those agents, first, I need to have the context of my business available for those agents to use. And then second, I'm going to think about training those agents just like I would a staff member. So an agent has a specific role, it has skills that are available to it, it has resources within the business that are available to it. And we start to roll it out, not giving it everything all at once. Like we don't want to open it up and, for instance, give access to all of our bank accounts and
Right.
contracts and all of that. We're creating a sandbox to train that agent just like we would train a staff member. So hey, here's a small project, or here's some things to kind of work on in a small way to get to see how that staff member feels and how they do in that, in the same way that an agent would work as well. And then as that agent performs, for instance, then you would expand the capabilities, if you will, further and further. So
Yeah, and very importantly, you said that the resources would sit again like in the hub. So as you do expand and maybe you do need to bring that human CFO, they would also have access to all of the data and all of the things and what they would have in the historical archives and things. And here's sort of where I wanted to ask this next question is I know that most people who are listening in today are like, we have SOPs for everybody. SOPs for roles, SOPs for jobs, SOPs for processes, SOPs for doing everything. But if all of those SOPs don't have some maybe broader connection back to the hub, that is a gap. Is that,
yeah.
we don't have maybe the collaborative SOPs where this is, we might have, well, before you do X, you check with Y, but maybe this needs to be a layer deeper if you have the hub where you have those touch points sort of spelled out, where operations should be sitting.
Oh, exactly. And you bring up a great point when we talk about, well, what all goes in the operational hub. We mentioned context in our earlier conversation. Certainly the roles of the business that lives in the operational hub. The SOPs and the knowledge base that lives in the operational hub. And by the way, your SOPs shouldn't really just be managed by one person. They should be owned and managed by multiple people. So if you're in sales, for instance, one of your job functions, if you will, is to update the SOPs for sales, right? And if you're in fulfillment or support, one of your functions is to update and manage the knowledge base. And here's where we can use agents to do this. So we want to make sure that our knowledge base is live, that it's not 6 months old and completely outdated, right? So most people don't like to manage and update SOPs, but we can deploy an agent, for instance, where we can just talk to the agent and say, "Hey, we just made a new update. There's some checklists we've added, blah blah blah," and then have it go off, reference the correct knowledge base item, look at the template, look what's there, and then incorporate that new feedback right into that knowledge base. So it happens very naturally. So instead of thinking, "Oh gosh, I've got to go." This Friday, my boss is on me about, going over to these documents and, updating and typing up a bunch of stuff. Think of it as like, what if you could just talk into a microphone when you notice something and say, oh, hey, we need to update this checklist, blah, blah, blah. Here's the information, hand it off to an agent. And now an agent, because it knows the context for your templates and your work and how you do things, it stitches all that in and it does a better job and a faster job than you would do, right?
Yeah. So again, this buys back that human time because I don't know the last time that we've, had a company come up and say something like, oh no, every, so often all of our employees get that reflective time at their desk and they get to sit and think about how they want things to look in 6 months or what kind of leader they want to be or the next role that they want to take on. Or, the really good idea fairy visited them, but they just haven't had a chance to do the research on it. So this sounds like a really great way where you're not necessarily adding complexity, you're adding precision.
Yeah. You're giving your staff space to be better at what they do. You're empowering them to love what they do and to love the company and love where it's going, right? That's the type of businesses that we really enjoy working with and helping. And by the way, that type of business, when staff feel really empowered, will go much further and much faster in getting there than a company where it's very disconnected and the strategic information lives with leadership, and staff are just sort of told what to do. Nobody shows up at work and nobody's really happy about it.
Right. Yeah, I love this concept. Now, let me ask you, we talked about 30 years ago, we sort of got away from this concept. Why do you think that is, that the hub and spoke became so specialized on the outer side and operations was just kind of the catch-all?
Uh, well, it's really been happening for like the last 50 years.
50
We
years.
could kind of touch on the fact that, back in the early, old days, if you had a phone or a fax machine and a Rolodex, and you had a lot of passion, you could crush it in business. And as software has come out, right? We've leveraged and used software to be better and faster, but we've taken it too far. And I always like to say that, in society, we see this pendulum that's just moving from side to side, right? We get to one extreme and we're like, oh, that's too much, and the pendulum starts coming back down and we're like, oh, this is great. But then it just swings up to the
Yeah,
other side.
because somebody
So
had a better idea this time.
and I think what's happening is, if we didn't have AI and the rapid amount of innovation and the world changing so quickly, we have a lot of disruption that's happening in the world today. If that weren't happening, we would certainly just keep doing things the way we were doing them. We would just keep, plugging in tools, and, we would be okay being the human integration layer. But the fact is that, again, market volatility and geopolitics and changes happening on a dime and disruption, and AI now every week, every month can do something just radically different and better than the week or month before. All of that is pushing business to have to transform. And so we are going back from a disconnected, siloed type of business process environment to one that is unified. That's really what I want listeners to take away, is that you need to start thinking about your business as a unified core of truth, a unified source of truth, this operational hub, again, with the context and the vision and values and who we are, where we're going, who we serve, your roles, your knowledge base, and how that sets up and supports then everybody in the company to be able to move much faster. So now, as we start to hear that something's happened in the world, and that is affecting your ability to handle pricing or to handle hiring or where you're going to allocate capital, when you have this type of hub and spoke model, this single source of truth, you can now respond much faster. So your ability to make decisions and pivot becomes much greater.
And one last thing about the operations sort of sitting in the middle hub and spoke model is everybody really has access to the hub in your design, is that nobody has to make an independent decision. So, in other words, marketing is not making an independent decision from the other areas of the business, even if they're going out and, let's say, they've been given an assignment. Here's a 90-day strategy, or here's a 6-month strategy, and they have to go through and make those decisions. If something does come up, they can always refer back to all the information in the hub or reach out to the right counterpart instead of having to make the decision and then try to defend it later. Because I think that's another thing that we see in the silo approach, is people are making the very best decisions for what they think they need to do. And they feel maybe sometimes like going back and asking or going back is a sign of they didn't understand the assignment, or maybe the data in the software is showing one thing. I like the idea that all of the values, and not only that, the resources and the things to check on are readily available in a hub model, and to your point, not with one person.
Yes. Yeah. I something else to kind of point out that we'll all laugh at is the COO for years has always been the gray-haired man or the gray-haired woman in the room. The one that has worked in lots of different industries and lots of different teams, and has worked in sales and worked in marketing and worked
Yeah.
in finance, because living in operations takes a really kind of a good or a great understanding of all aspects of business and how to bring things together so that as we move as a company, again, we're not, succeeding in one area of the business and breaking or slowing down another area of the
Right.
business. And so think about now as we shift, we want to move away from, finding the 50, 60-year-old woman or man who's, been around for 30 years, 30, 40 years, working in all aspects of the business. We now have the capability of this cohesiveness, this transparency, the context, all of that living at this core. So that, again, I love your point of staff being able to now make decisions that they would not have been able to make before, that are now best for the business, because they understand this is, again, where we're going, and who's doing what, and what our values are, and how we best support customers, et cetera. So that then frees up, again, the founder or the business owner or key staff members from having to be, kind of the train director, if you will, all the time. So.
Yeah, definitely not just efficiency and workflow getting better. When people are on the same mission that they really want to be together, it's incredible what speed and with what uh results that you can get out of that when everybody is on the mission because they want to be there and because they have a real, like you keep saying, empowerment. And I can see how having operations at the hub, in your role, but always being able to reach out and have what you need, without having to take the time to track people down or to run another study or to do something, um, really could be empowering as to the employee going, yeah, I now feel more supported, in my role than I did before we moved to this model.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I love it. All right. So where can people find you? Where can they learn about the model? Where can they reach out to you and maybe even lurk you on social media?
Yeah. So a lot of folks that find us come to us because they want to make this transition, but they're stuck. They're juggling lots of plates. They're overwhelmed. They know they need to be making decisions, but they're having trouble making those decisions because there's a lack of confidence, I think, today about where things are headed, how that's going to affect my business.
Right.
So we've recently launched an advisor that acts very much like I would or my partner would on a phone call. You can access that advisor at advisor.modernoperators.com. And that advisor is trained on all of our principles, how we think and how we operate. You don't have to get on a call with us. And you can have a conversation with them to help really identify what challenges you're having and experiencing in your business. And then we'll provide a plan for you to be able to move past that and be able to make those transitions.
Fantastic. All right. So we're going to put that down inside the show notes. Anywhere else? Should we follow you on LinkedIn? Do you have a Substack or do you just want us to go to your website?
Yeah, the website is great, modernoperators.com. You can always reach out to me on LinkedIn, Damon Flowers. And we have a growing subreddit as well where we share a lot of modern operational um, thoughts and thought leadership. So, yeah.
Fantastic. All right. So we're going to put all that down inside the show notes. So if you find us on the day we launch, you'll see it 2 years from now, 5 years from now. You'll still be able to find Damon and this model. I think this is such an incredibly um, great perspective. And it's so funny that we do keep repeating the past. For whatever reason, we just keep, like you said, the pendulum goes back and forth and we're going the other way. But at the speed that modern business runs, this is going to be a pendulum swing, that's going to be much more, I think, impactful than maybe it would have been in the 60s and the 50s. This is going to have a very big impact on current business and the speed of business.
It is. Yeah. And the last thing I'll say, Don, is I would really encourage folks, the worst thing you can do is to just kick the can down the road and hope that, oh, well, in 6 months it'll work itself out, or I'll figure it out, et cetera. Please do not do that. Please do not do that. Um, we want to be proactive about embracing what's coming, and we're going to be going through a lot of change. That is just what's going to happen. So the quicker we can embrace that and start making that transition, the better off you're going to be.
Yeah, perfect. All right. Thank you so much for being here. It's such a great conversation. Really looking forward to hearing from all of you out there your thoughts about whether or not you're going to move to the system or if you've been operating in this hub and spoke. And I always forget to tell people to like and subscribe. So I'm going to do that now so the engineers don't get mad at me. And thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate your time.
This has been great, Don. I've loved talking with you.
Me too. Me too. Thanks so much. All right. We'll talk to y'all next time on the next episode of the Business Mastery Podcast. Take care. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Business Mastery Podcast. If you want to learn more about me, you can go to DawnKKennedy.com, and you can now check us out on YouTube, as well as, of course, any of your favorite platforms that host podcasts. Take care.